Hey everybody, welcome back to OHKo, a Pokemon VGC podcast, and what a week it is here today. I am your host, Joe Brown. Sierra Dawn currently casting some Valorant in the moment, so we gotta make a little pivot, and pivot to two of the best in the game, Yuki Zaninovich and Len Deuel. Friends, how are we doing today? Welcome to the pod. We'll start with you, Yuki. What's up?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me. This is such an exciting weekend, and the fact that I get to yap even more about it is, such an honor. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we wouldn't be able to continue the podcast. There were so many, literally like 5 different people messaged us in the Discord saying, we need Yuki this week. Like, usually we try to get, winners and all stuff. They're like, no, we want the caster from Portland, baby. We need to know the hottest goss behind the desk. And speaking of players in Portland, my goodness, Len, you go from casting finals last year with me, casting Alex win, to making top 8 of the next Portland. I mean, should you just move to Portland? It feels like it's your city.
I was in top 8 2 years ago too, so just can I keep alternating? Right. I'll be back with you next year.
Spoilers. But obviously besides the top 8, how was the weekend?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I love Portland as a city. It's one of my favorite ones on the VGC circuit. Got some good food. Enjoyed the easy to get around, like nice transit in Portland to get through. It was fun.
Yeah, and you got the West Coast buff, exactly. All the West Coast.
No time is great. Not having to fly east, perfect.
Oh yeah, I know some of the casters just like left at like 10 o'clock at night on Sunday instead of waiting till Monday like usual, right, to get back to the jobs with that red eye. And good luck to them if they were at work on that in the next morning. That's it. But we got a fun show tap for today. Talking Portland, talking commentary, talking Regulation I, excuse me, everything going on with VGC right now. But Yuki, we have to start with you. You've already done commentary before. You've been on the Pokemon streams back in Japan and everything, but this was kind of like a separate category. This was the first time that was like commentator Yuki behind the desk for a whole duration of the tournament on the official Pokemon stream. So like, I'm very excited. I know everyone was excited. Like, you had so much energy. It was a lot of fun watching throughout the weekend. So we need your thoughts. Tell us the raw Yuki thoughts. How did it feel?
It felt really good, and I didn't expect to say that so confidently, I guess, because I just had such a busy like few weeks leading up to it, and I really want to just study everything I can. Like, I knew I was going to be working with Aaron and Evan specifically, so like looking at their past streams, like understand like what kind of preferences they have, even just like both from looking at the videos, but also maybe having a call with them. But like none of it really like panned out. I was able to get like a 30-minute call with Aaron maybe, and then Evan, I think he also had a really busy week. So I was a little bit nervous going into it because I felt like I could have prepared so much more, and like I just felt like there's some like a lot of unknowns that I would have to tackle, but I was just like really, really set up for success. Like I guess I'll probably do shout outs later. There's definitely a lot of people I want to thank, so I want to do some shout outs later, but I just felt so supported by not only the other casters, but also the entire production team. And I just felt like there was never a time where I didn't know what was going on, or I didn't know what to say. Like I was really well prepared. So in the end, I felt like, yeah, obviously I made some mistakes. Like how wouldn't you on your first time? But I felt like there were ones that were maybe less noticeable or not too bad. And most importantly, I think I had fun, and I saw some of the chat comments. It sounds like they had fun too, and I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, and I think that definitely you could tell the excitement behind the desk, and like I'm kind of curious when is your nerves about your performance? Like, is it nerves about like, oh, I hope I don't say the wrong word, or like is there also a sense of nerves from the excitement level because there were people excited to see you on the stream? So not only did you want to do well for yourself, like I don't want to project here, I don't want to sound like a therapist,
sure.
But not only do you want to do well for your own personal achievements as a commentator, but there was also expectations and people were excited to see you perform well, right? That's an aspect.
Yeah, I'd say maybe that part was the part I was like the least nervous about, and I think that's because I'm fortunate and I've had many opportunities to be on camera for Pokemon, like being put on stream, and also having like casting experience beforehand. I guess unfortunately I never had the opportunity to cast with Len before, but I've casted with like I guess I've never casted with Eric. I guess I haven't casted with anyone I cast with except for Wolfe. Like I casted with Wolfe at the Japan Invitational he did on YouTube. And then for Victory Road, like I've casted with Gabby, for example, like Stefan. I casted a lot with Hayden. Hayden was like really someone who helped me like really unearth like my passion for casting. So I really, really appreciate them. So yeah, I don't think I was too nervous about being on camera because I've had that experience. I was nervous about like two reasons. Like one was that they're both like my big focuses for the weekend. One was, can I really provide like really good analysis? And I mean, I guess that's kind of obvious when you're like an analyst and you're a commentator. Like you want to be providing like the really maybe beneath the surface kind of analysis to really show like what is exciting about this game. And I think even as a player, it's hard to pick that up sometimes. But when you're the caster, you have to look at both points of views. And I think that's what makes it really hard. I can see Len's nodding his head a lot. So maybe you have to, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, go for it, Len.
But like the second one is about like being like an entertainer, right? Like you're not just an analysis machine. Like you're not just like, chat GPT just telling you what's going on. Like you want to be like exciting. You want to, like make the hype moments really hype. And I think that's the part I have like probably the least amount of experience on. Like, when you're playing the game, like you're analyzing. So like that's kind of natural. But to be like a sportscaster and like, pop off and like make it like, an exciting moment for everybody, I think that's the part I have the least experience on. So I was a little bit nervous, but especially I remember reading a comment and it said, oh, like I love seeing how the other casters become like 2 or 3 times more hyper when Wolfe is casting with them. And it really was true. Like I felt like I was going off the rails, but probably in like a good way when I was with Wolfe. And of course with Evan and Aaron as well. Like I felt like I was with people who are just so like vibrant with energy that it felt like natural to be like my organic self. And I think that's what made it easy to even do the entertainer part a little bit too.
Yeah, what do you think, Len? Is he accurately portraying how you feel as a color commentator?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the balance you have to strike, and I think the analysis part is true because that's the value that, especially depending on the role that you may provide to the stream, and wanting to make sure that you kind of see all of the details. And it is more difficult than when playing sometimes because it is not necessarily a team you're familiar with, and you're trying to look at it from both perspectives and make sure you understand the scenario and the thought process behind both players. It's like playing from outside against 2 other people sometimes. And so it can be tricky for sure. And then you have these like rounds that go back and forth between something like very fast and offensive and a totally different play style. Then you may get slow and positioning and pivoting, and you've like both can be hard to keep up with for different reasons. I imagine that like my match was one really
I knew we were going to get there. I knew we were going to get there today.
Back to back. That's
I think we might as well just get into it then, Len. Since you brought it up. You brought it up. So Yuki, you're there. There's whole comments. I'm just like, I'm happy my boy Len gets the dub. I'm like, Torracat goes boo, but Len, yay. You know what I mean? So like, take us in that moment, Yuki.
So I think that was my 4th cast of the weekend, I think. And like the 3 previous matches were all like hyper offense / like standard stuff. It was like Solgaleo, rock slide flinch, paralysis. And then the other ones were like, I don't know, like Koraidon, Calyrex, Shadow Rider, hyper offense stuff. Like they were over in like 5 or 6 turns. And I don't know, like it felt like I didn't have to like dig into the back of my brain of like, oh, what's going to happen in like 3 turns. And then we're deciding like, what match we're going to stream for top cut first. And we're like, oh, like, Olivia versus Len, like they're both like really on the cusp for worlds. Like they probably have secured it, but maybe not. And like, whoever like advances from here, like surely does. Like this is going to be like a great match between like really good players. And like, yeah, like of course, let's do Len. Like, and this will be great. Like I'll be casting with Wolfe. Like, it's a home run. And then I look at the team sheet and I'm like, oh no. I'm doing some serious gymnastics. Sorry.
I said, buckle up, you got 40 minutes of Pokemon coming.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So like, all right, we got to talk about the team then. Like what led you to, because obviously we always make the T-Star or Garchomp jokes, but like when there's 2 restrictions on the team, we can't play around anymore. We can't be throwing out some, for fun mons anymore. So we got to stick with the restricted. So how do we get to this top 8 core, Len?
Yeah, I mean, I can't take too much credit for it. I had like no ideas with a week to go before the tournament. I'd been building Scarf Kyogre Zacian I'd spent a lot of time on, and like a million ways to try to make Tyranitar and Zamazenta work together because it felt like they should, and never got anywhere with either of those threads and was like not feeling ready for the tournament. So I sent a couple people a message, sent Aaron trailer messages like I have no ideas, please help me figure out where to go from here. He sent me a few things. He sent me what he ended up using at the tournament, which was like a hard Trick Room. I tried some of that and realized that I think hard Trick Room has morphed. Like Generation 4 or 5, that would be the team I'd give to anyone who was starting the game. Be like, this is the easiest thing to do. Just try this out. And then I started loading up hard trick room games in Ragai, and this is hard now. Like, you're so delicate. It's so easy to lose everything on the spot. So I didn't want to do that. And then he gave me the Tropicos. I think Brendan put the exact pace together, and he and Brendan had used it for the GC that had happened a couple weeks earlier. And that felt a lot better. It was very similar to what I'd been doing in Regulation G with Incineroar and Sublefty's Calyrex. And it, was also similar to just Pokemon in general. We've all played plenty of Incineroar at this point. And so it was easy to pick up, and it definitely felt a lot better in practice than anything I'd used up to that point.
I do wonder with the team, like, obviously Kyogre kind of had a huge day, and we'll talk about that, with the metagame and the implications going into NAIC and stuff, but like, is it too simplified to say that, you have 3 grass types in a format or in an event which is very successful with Kyogre? Like, was that a happy little accident, or was that a major factor? Does Tropico struggle with Kyogre? And how did it feel for about the 15 seconds or so that you had 4 grass types on your team with your double Amoonguss graphic at the end of?
What are you talking about? I guess the 3 grass types didn't help me enough. My 3 losses were all to Kyogre. I lost to no teams that didn't have a Kyogre on them. So, wow. Not a great weekend for my Kyogre matchup. But I think what makes Kyogre so strong in this format is partly because it is very, especially the Kyogre and Calyrex Ice Rider pairing, which is what I lost to all 3 times. They're very good into Rillaboom and Incineroar. Because you can so easily pressure Incineroar, makes it very hard to switch out into the grass types if you may have Glacial Lances coming back the other way. And so it makes those kinds of balanced teams struggle more than almost anything else in the format can. And that was definitely my experience. It was like one wrong step, and there's no way out of it when you have multiple grass types and the Glacial Lances on their way. And then Kyogre is just such an offensive powerhouse. Like, if you position, it's always been one of the most position-dependent Pokemon there can be. And that's still the case, right? But if you can get Kyogre landed in the right spot, that water spout is like an unstoppable threat, right? Like, it's one of the few things that, even with Terra Shell up, does like 50% to Tropicos. So you can't just Calm Mind in front of it and then think you'll go along with it. I lost one game to the Kyogre because I took a water spout to like 50%, got a Calm Mind, then went for the Terra to clear the rain, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm +1 special defense, I'm 50% health, like surely I'm okay now. And then just got Helping Hand Hydro Pumped and just KO'd. Okay, well, this is like the oldest thing with to just bust through Tropicos.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. You know what I mean? I guess you're gonna risk that Hydro Pump there, but I think I was trying to make Kyogre work at the beginning of the format, and everyone and their mothers were running Miraidon. It's like, okay, well, it's not even a water type. My Kyogre is a grass type, right? It has to terrestrialize every single game, and it did not have the greatest performance in Milwaukee overall, maybe because of said Miraidon usage. But is this kind of like the Incineroar effect, where at the beginning of the format, everybody, Incineroar's not that great, and then now it's up to 50% usage. Like, Kyogre, like, we get lulled into a false, there's Wide Guard everywhere. Oh, you're going to miss Origin Pulse. You're going to miss Hydro Pump. But then, like, it comes out and has a strong performance like this. Like, I'll start with you, Yuki. Like, what led to Kyogre having such a resurgence? Because it's been around for 20 years. We know it's a good mon, so why weren't we using it in Milwaukee for us to then use it in Portland?
Yeah, I think it feels like Kyogre was in the position that Miraidon was in the beginning of Regulation G, where everyone like kind of writes it off, saying like, like in Miraidon's case, it was like, Rillaboom's everywhere, like you just hard stopped by Rillaboom, like there's no way out of it, and then people just didn't realize the pivot potential that it has. And I think this time it was something similar, where it's like, Miraidon's everywhere, like you're always at like a disadvantage, like the Prosynthus mons are too strong, like there's just no way. And I would like to see like the different Kyogre teams and how they approach the matchup into Sun. But for example, I really like how Brendan Zhang did. Came pretty short to came really close to making top cut. Made day 2 with Parting Shot Grimmsnarl, which I thought was really, really clever, because you have like Choice Scarf Urshifu to pivot fast, and also Parting Shot Grimmsnarl. So you always pressure rain coming in at any given time, so that their opponent just struggles to bring in Koraidon, which just means like you have so much less wiggle room. You you're basically playing with one less restricted because you have to deal with these pivoting mons first. So I thought that was really, really clever. And yeah, I would need to like look a little bit harder into like how Gavin might do that. But clearly with the finals, pretty showing that he was able to beat. I think he beat like 3 Koraidon Weezing teams. Like he beat all 3 that he played against. So clearly, like it worked for him.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Lon. Sorry.
Finding the right version of Kyogre is also a difficult challenge. Like not just the pairing to put with it, which seems to have stabilized around Calyrex Ice Rider. Like you mentioned, Brendan's team was also Calyrex Ice Rider, Gavin, and then you have a subset there with what Calyrex Ice Rider is it? The one in top 4 was like Terra Grass with Seed Bomb, which is helpful for clearing like another one of Kyogre's obstacles, and like Bulky Waters would be a problem for both Kyogre and Calyrex without that. And then Gavin has the Leech Seed, which can kind of serve a similar purpose of like a different kind of offense. But the Kyogre itself, you can run Specs or Scarf. You can be slow and try to lean on Calyrex's Trick Room. You can be fast. I think there were more fast ones in those pairings, but not with Scarf, right? And not Tailwind either. Just relying on kind of natural speed, and it's enough to be over things like Adamant Urshifu or Incineroar that mean even without any speed control, you can just position Kyogre and have a huge threat out of it.
And even some Zamazenta.
Yeah.
I was actually just looking. I saw that there are a couple of Kyogre Zamazenta teams here, and it's kind of similar. Like we always say Zamazenta and Lunala are the big secondary restricteds that help your first one succeed, like Lunala with Koraidon or Zamazenta with CSR or with Kyogre in this case. And I wonder how often it comes up, like in a Terapagos mirror or in a Kyogre matchup where you have the Pokemon that has Wide Guard also. So like you get into a mind game where like, well, we both need Origin Pulse or we both need Water Spout to succeed, but I have the advantage. And if their other restricted does not have Wide Guard, is it just like free real estate? Are you just clicking Water Spout turn 1 just to see what happens, or like with Kyogre being fast or slow, you say most of them are fast. So let's say in this world where they're usually super offensive, just go for it, Choice Scarf and Water Spout. How do you counter that on the other side if you don't have Wide Guard?
Yeah, I mean, Kyogre can still have damage mitigated pretty easily, and it's still not that fast, right? Because we're not talking about Choice Scarf fast. We're talking about like timid fast from a 90-base speed Pokemon. And so that's why it's so positionally dependent. Because if there is a Miraidon on the other side, you aren't doing that. If there's a faster Urshifu on the other side, you aren't doing that because Surging Strikes is going to come through and hurt Kyogre too much to get that damage. And so it's about finding that right moment to make to capitalize on the damage and to really punish your opponent for ever being like one step out of position.
Yeah, and I think one thing that was more like of a tailwind, so to speak, for Kyogre is that there's a lot of teams right now with Miraidon that don't have like Fergaraf. And I think that's something that you can exploit with Kyogre, because you could have like a fake out mon next to Kyogre, and if you can just mitigate the Miraidon for one turn, yes, you're going to resist the Water Spout, but you're still going to take a lot of damage, and you're not going to be able to attack the that Kyogre that turn. So then you can pivot out into redirection Pokemon, maybe another fake out user. I think there's probably a lot of ways to explore Miraidon, which doesn't look good maybe on the surface.
Yeah, because that fake out is usually Rillaboom, and so you've mitigated the electric terrain as well. And
right, because Rillaboom has fake out. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I just think it was funny because like I was playing some games, and like we're working with our Discord community. We're trying to build a Shadow Rider Ho-Oh team. This is the team we came as our duo, and like we have some fun. And there's certain matchups. So I'm like, man, I'm not even scared of Miraidon, bro. Like I'm taking 40% for this Volt Switch right now. Like I'm good. I don't care. Like Ho-Oh's crushing it. And then I load into a Kyogre team. I'm like, oh my god, I have no answer right now. Like my Shadow Rider's gonna get one shot. My Ho-Oh's gonna get one shot. Like it's so tough. And then I was like, man, like, is this the tech? And then it comes out in Portland. So like, I wonder, as you guys are your top level players, having so much Kyogre showing off, like Jody used Kyogre Zamazenta and so many other great players using Kyogre Zacian or Kyogre and Ice Rider here. Like the cat's out of the bag, right? The Incineroar's out of the bag for NAIC. Where if you were a top player, if you were playing NAIC, when do you make that decision of like, I'm not gonna bring the sauce to Portland to save it for NAIC, or is it like well, I got to get my points. However, I don't care if it's at Portland or at NAIC.
I'd be surprised if people are holding on to too much for an AIC. I think every tournament matters so much now, and then the stakes, both in terms of points and prizing, are so high. Most people are just going out there and trying to win. That doesn't mean that people won't have invented something new by New Orleans, right? There's a big portion of the player pool who weren't in Portland who may have been sitting on something, and then there's 3 weeks between the two tournaments to react to a bunch of finishes, right? Because it was harder within the week between the triple regional weekend before Portland, and now you've had 4 regionals in the last 2 weeks. You'll have just Bologna between now and New Orleans, and so there's a lot of time to come up with something new and really try to push things forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess to add, I think we've seen that it doesn't really, there's usually more benefit to testing a team in earlier tournaments than to just hold on to it for the big one. Like a really good example was when, and I think they showed this in the documentary itself too, but how Wolfe was like thinking about not bringing the Calyrex Shadow Rider team that he ultimately brought to Worlds. Like he was pretty set on using that concept at Worlds, but was thinking about hiding it for NAIC. And I think like Marcus told him, hey, I don't think you should be bringing this, but then he ultimately decided to bring it so that he can get like in-person practice and maybe get more feedback on the team. And yeah, I think he was like not super happy about his NAIC performance, but then he was able to top cut Worlds, which by his standards and by his record, maybe he's not happy about that either. But it's possible that he might not have just done well at all. Might have done like not as well at Worlds if he had not brought that, because he still had like a legendary day one runner. He went like 18-0, just went completely undefeated. So I think that's like a pretty good case to show that it's usually not worth hiding things. Like it mostly gives you a good feedback mechanism. It's just more valuable than going on on ladder or something to try out a team.
What's interesting, you talk about the documentary, Yuki, you were pseudo involved. You were on camera for the documentary. Give us some behind the scenes takes. Give us like some insight. How did those group conversations happen where you're just like trying to forget that there's a camera on you guys and you're trying to talk team matchups and whatever? Like how was it being a part of that documentary experience?
Yeah, it was really cool. As the closest thing I will ever be to Hollywood, so I got that little bit of experience. I think we really tried to focus on being ourselves and not really holding anything back. Like obviously, like we're talking about matchup plans and things like that, but we knew the documentary is not going to come out for like a year or something, so there's nothing to really hide. And I think we wanted to just show like our authentic selves, like how we prepare, how we talk to each other, how we support each other. And I think the document, like the crew did like a really good job of like portraying that. So I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And yeah, like I think it's crazy to me how much like content you have to cut when you do those things, because there were so many different like storylines that I think they were probably like considering, and then they just have to go all the way until the end in order to like figure out like which ones they're actually going to choose. So yeah, personally to me, it was really exciting to be part of that process and just see this whole new world, because even part of my day job, even part of Pokemon, even being like on stream, you just don't know what it's like to create like a short series. So it was really, really cool for me.
Yeah, no, that was I really love the documentary. I know we had Rosemary on after the documentary release to talk about everything, hear the background stuff. I think it's a cool process. I hope Pokemon does more events like those in the future. But we're talking about Portland, talking about Gavin Michaels' regional winning team, the Kyogre and Calyrex Ice Rider. So a bit of a different mode than what we'd expected through most of Regulation I right now, where there was a lot of fast Pokemon, Koraidon, Miraidon, and Shadow Rider, and all these different super big, fast, heavy hitters. Kyogre on a different way, but like it's kind of like everyone else was super fast. It's just the Kyogre and Cali Ice are slow base speed, but Basculegion it has Swift Swim, right? Grimmsnarl has Prankster speed, as fast as humanly as it can be. Fluttermane obviously with the 135 speed as well. Like when we came into Reg I kind of like had an idea about a super basic Kyogre team of like, I was kind of going back to 2019 a little bit here. I was like, okay, let's go Kyogre. Let's throw a Rillaboom. I know Rillaboom didn't exist yet, but like, we'll just keep it simple. Go Kyogre and Rillaboom and Urshifu and Tornadus and and Zacian as the second. So I guess more Sword and Shield. Like, I already have 5 of my 6 Pokemon. I don't need to build anything else, right? And that's just not what what Gavin's team is at all. It's not just that normal Torn Urshi Kyogre core that James Beck, top 4 worlds with that I'm always thinking about. So, What are your thoughts on Basculegion as a threat in this meta? Was it just a Gavin special? Was Gavin cosplaying his Palafin from OCIC that championship with Basculegion, or like Yuki? Is this the real deal?
Yeah, I mean the Basculegion. The only talk I've heard about Basculegion was Ryosuke Kosuge, 2013 World's finalist, used it in the Japan Nationals like qualifier tournament, and then I believe made it through. So I think we should be seeing that Worlds this year. There was like a rumor going around, because I don't think they confirmed their sets, but there's a rumor going around that they were using Power Herb Phantom Force so that you can break Wide Guard in one turn and then Water Spout the same turn. So that was the extent of Basculegion that I knew about. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's kind of gimmicky. Like, yeah, you see the Power Herb at like, open team sheet, so it's probably not as effective. So that's why that was like my first impression when I heard like Gavin was running Basculegion, but he's running just like much more of a standard set. And I think we just see how good it is as like a closer. I think it makes sense to me that it fits on that team because Kyogre, like I think he was using a pretty fast version, but still not like the fastest Pokemon. And you still need some support. Same with Calyrex Ice, but Basculegion really just wants the rain, and everything else is pretty independent. Like it doesn't need any support around not getting hit by Fake Out, for example, because it has a ghost typing. As long as your Pokemon are fainted, like it's a really, really strong last respects. Obviously, if the rain's up, you don't need speed control either. So I think it's like a really flexible Pokemon to have on his team. So I felt like it fit perfectly, and we could definitely be seeing more of it in the future.
Yeah, I think it's such a like objectively good Pokemon. Like if you like outside of any metagame, between Swift Swim being such a powerful ability, Ghost for the Fake Out immunity, and then these like broken move they've given it in this game to get up to 200 base power, right? And it also like solves one of Kyogre's big problems, which is that you need more speed out. Because while you can be just timid and fast, and it's really powerful against all these mid-speed Pokemon like Incineroar or slower Urshifu or something, it doesn't get you past things like Calyrex Shadow or Miraidon. And so you mentioned Tornadus earlier as like a previous common Kyogre partner, because the Tailwind can get you straight past there. But I think Tornadus, to some extent, is really poorly positioned in this metagame. The two things are contributing to that. The Miraidon usage is bad for it, because it can't do anything to Miraidon. You've got a water resist that Tornadus can't touch, when in previous formats, most of the water resists were grass types that Tornadus would have done well against. And then also, there's enough like defensive play that Tailwind might not be enough time, especially if you're sacrificing a Pokemon for it. So we see all of the dual screens from Grimmsnarl and things like this, and the amount of Snarl and Assault Vest in the format, that just getting fast for 3 turns might not be enough to win with Kyogre. And so the Tornadus then can end up being kind of a dead Pokemon. You Tailwind once, you don't get much done, you lose a Pokemon, you have less positioning power for later on in the game. But Basculegion gives you that rush of speed that you might need to go hit a Cridon really hard, or hit a Calyrex Shadow really hard, and gives it to you instantly and without being so much of a dead spot, because you still have very serious damage potential out of that bring. And in a double restricted format, we're only normally bringing 2 non-restricted Pokemon. Like they really need to offer something consistent in the game. Yeah,
and I mean, great point with the big threat and the taking advantage of Kyogre speed instead of Tornadus helping Kyogre do better. Kyogre is now helping the rest of the team do better, right? And there are so many ghost types. There's Fluttermane, right? There's CSR. There's all these things, and then there's so many Terra ghosts to get around Fake Out that Basculegion's like, don't mind if I do. Please, Incineroar, turn into a ghost type right now, or stay in your normal type, and you're gonna have to do the Terra sweat. Am I gonna hit you with a water attack? Am I gonna hit you with the last resort? Or right, like you're kind of getting that mind game advantage with the Basculegion, and I just think it's very, very interesting. But Len did bring up the Grimmsnarl, and that was the next Pokemon I was going to talk about on Gavin's team. We talk about how valuable these screens are, because Tailwind's only 3 turns. Trick Room is only really 4 turns, because the 5th turn is the one you set it up. So, but those screens, they last for 8 turns, baby, and nobody is clicking Brick Break. I think someone's got to choose a Pokemon that has Brick Break at this point, because 2 NA regionals in a row have been won by a Grimmsnarl that's been putting in the work. What is this, just the stock standard? Are we expecting Grimmsnarl for every event now?
Well, and in Europe, right? I mean, I think it's a very impactful Pokemon. I think there was one Chien-Pao with Brick Break pretty.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, I thought Len was like having that on the tip of his tongue, like, oh, break, chimp pow, break, chimp pow.
Yeah,
Who was that? Do you remember, Len?
Who did Montana play in top 16? I think that's where
Oh, I think it was Emilio, right?
it was. Emilio, yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Anytime you have a format with, step one of this format with some really powerful offensive Pokemon, things like Koraidon, Miraidon, that are not boosting, they're just going out with their initial offense. Dual screens will always be a reaction to that, because these Pokemon rely on getting one-hit KOs with their like raw damage potential, and so then only trading positively because they're not having to take hits back because they're getting one-hit KOs. As soon as you flip that and have screens to mitigate the damage, and now you're both getting to attack, often those Pokemon don't stand up nearly as well. And so then you start to turn things, because if we're going to have dual screens, then it's much easier to play very slow. Maybe you have boosting Pokemon like Combine Trapagos that can take advantage of the slow play on the other side, or you have Leech Seed and you get even slower behind it, and you just kind of, we've talked often about like the wheel of what types, like what restricted Pokemon hit each other very well, but you can have the same kind of wheel with just pace that the game is playing at. And I think dual screens are like a natural reaction to where things started in Regai, and I think it'll be really interesting to see in New Orleans how that continues to turn and people react to so much Grimmsnarl over this first month of the format.
Yeah, and Grimmsnarl is also super versatile because you can do a lot of roll compression. Like as like Len just talked so much about the value of screens, which is like a great analysis, and then the second big part of restricted format is speed control, right? Like if your big dinosaur Pokemon can be faster than their dinosaur Pokemon, then your dinosaurs are not going to be extinct as fast as theirs. So then you want to have speed control, and then typically Grimmsnarl has Thunder Wave, which not only gives you that speed control access, but it also like mitigates their ability to move like 1/4 of the time, which is super impactful in a format where you have these high-powered Pokemon. Like just one turn not being able to move is much more costly than in regulation A, B, or C, for example, when like maybe it's not a big deal for an Annihilate can't do Rage Fist that turn. But the interesting part about Gavin's team is that he has Sucker Punch on Grimmsnarl instead of Thunder Wave, which seems like a really big deal. Like he has multiple speed control options in Calyrex Ice Rider and also Icy Wind from Fluttermane, but at least like Fluttermane, for example, that's probably not like a Pokemon that you want to bring in like every matchup. It's just not as versatile probably. So whereas Grimmsnarl, like I would struggle to think of like so many matchups where it's just like blatantly bad. So like Sucker Punch had to have really high value, and at least on stream I don't recall seeing like any big scene where like Sucker Punch or like a matchup where like Sucker Punch was a big deal. So I'm curious if either of you have any feedback or thoughts on why.
Well, there were some attempted Sucker Punches and Thunderclaps on stream that were very, very stressful. I was just literally sitting on my couch and I'm like, oh my god, click Thunderbolt, bro. I was like, I will bet my life this Lunala is going to not click an attack, or not click an attack for your Thunderclap 8 turns in a row. Like, just do it, man. Like it was so nervous. Like you're sitting there watching backstage, right? Like how did you feel in those stressful Thunderclap moments?
I think like every like caster was just like squirming in their chair every time they clicked like Wide Guard, because it's like, oh, like what are they going to do it next? When are they going to do it next? And then we also like realized like, oh, like they could go for like timer, and then we saw like the 3-minute timer at the end. It was like, oh, like if they had just spent like a little bit more time on like move selection, then maybe they didn't even have to connect a Thunderclap. They could have just won by timer. But it's like, but like Ting Lu was in the back, and Ting Lu has a lot of HP, so like even if Raging Bolt had like more HP in the end, like the Raging Bolt player would have ended up winning. So it just caused a lot of ruckus, and I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, Len and I know from Portland last year with Alex Underhill and Chupa in the finals. There was the Thunderclap mind games in that championship in Game 3 for Alex. But obviously the Sucker Punch also helps on the Grimmsnarl, because why Thunderwave a Shadow Rider when I can just knock it out with Sucker Punch, right, Len?
Yeah, I think you have to imagine that's what the main target for Sucker Punch is. It would be a big problem for Basculegion, Kyogre, Calyrex as a group to have Astral Barrages coming down the other way, and Sucker Punch is helpful there. Do you think that was the first time we've seen someone successfully like 8-0 stall Sucker Punch or Thunderclap and then win a game on stream?
I saw like multiple people on social media say that, so I'd be pretty confident to say.
Because all it takes is one mistake, right? One of those 8 calls to be incorrect, and you lose the game. Like, what was it? I saw somebody, because he had Meteor Beam, right? So I think it was one of the casters that said it. Like, on the turn that you think he's going to protect, click Meteor Beam, because like he's when he was out of Sucker Punches. You know what I mean? Like, then he doesn't have priority or Thunderclap anymore. Like, so you get the boost, and then the next turn you get the knockout. Like, that mind game was just so crazy. It was just funny that I know Scott was giggling on commentary multiple rounds that we got into Sucker Punch and Thunderclap mind games. Something
Not
in
again.
something in the air in Portland there. Let's check out some of the other teams here. Obviously, Zhejiang here in the finals with the Koraidon and Shadow Rider version with Galarian and Weezing. I know I was talking with James Evans when James Evans Top Cut Milwaukee with this Koraidon CSR Weezing core. Now, he didn't have the Brute Bonnet and Walking Wake. I think that's the crazy part to me, is this Walking Wake that won that regional with Aqua Jet, which at first you go, what? And then it makes sense to break all the focus sashes in the format. But Galarian Weezing is kind of on a roll. It's Pokemon cyclical, guys, right? Like, we had Grimmsnarl was nowhere for a while, and now we put the restricteds back. I got to get the screens, and Grimmsnarl's everywhere. Weezing, whatever. We don't need it. These abilities are too broken. We need Weezing back on, right? So, like, what do we think of Weezing standing in Zhejiang's team here in the finals?
I would say, like, Zhejiang was pretty opportunistic with this pick because, like, we actually saw success from Weezing already in the previous weekend, like in the Melbourne Regional Championships. Masayoshi Kuro won using a very, very similar team as what Zhejiang had. There were just like some small adaptations. Like, I think he had like Will-O-Wisp on the Weezing. I think most of everything else was about the same, but I think the Aqua Jet on the Walking Wake is like a huge, huge deal. And I mentioned this a little bit on broadcast too, but basically, like, the team originated from a different Japanese player called Kona, who used it to play in the Japan Nationals qualifier. And it was like a very, very similar shape as what Masayoshi used to win Melbourne. And in his blog, he was talking about like, I was looking for a third move, after like Hydro Steam, Draco Meteor, kind of no-brainers, Snarl for the dark types and to mitigate damage out from the special attackers. There's just no good like fourth move. So they're just like looking through the list and they saw like Aqua Jet. And it's like, I didn't know it got a priority move. Like, this is a big deal. And like, in all the sets I saw on stream, both from Melbourne and from Portland, like, Aqua Jet was just putting in so much work. Like, everything was just in range. Like, because it's in Sun, like, it's just not doing that much damage. But there's so many Pokemon that have Focus Sash, that have Sturdy, Terra Shell. Like, there's just so many times where you just want to do one damage. And having like an Assault Vest Pokemon, you usually want it to have a priority move because you're mitigated by the inability to protect. So that's why, like, Iron Hands, for example, is a perfect Pokemon for Assault Vest because it boosts its already unreal stats like to the moon, but you also still have access to that priority move that makes it have utility outside of just being like a health pack. So I can't talk, like, I love that Walking Wake set, and I thought it like fit perfectly into that team.
I think especially with Focus Sash becoming the predominant Calyrex Shadow Rider item, and kind of how miserable Astral Barrages coming in towards Koraidon, Calyrex, Weezing can be otherwise. Like, if you don't have to play the we're both at 1 HP, whose Astral Barrage is going to win game because you can just Aqua Jet it off. And the Walking Wake is so generally good there because the Assault Vest makes it very bulky into Astral Barrage. You can take an Astral Barrage and Snarl back. And so it helps a lot with that Calyrex Ice Rider. Definitely in practice playing with Calyrex myself, like, every time I was up against that Assault Vest Walking Wake set, it just makes it so much harder to break through it with Astral Barrages.
It almost feels somewhat of a, and I don't mean it in a negative way, it almost feels somewhat of a single set. You know what I mean? Because like singles protect is not as common. Like you can just throw a quick attack on your Sylveon. You can just throw Aqua Jet on your Walking Wake for like the just in case, oh crap, button emergency. I have priority to win this singles game. Like using the Assault Vest, like it's kind of like interesting that Walking Wake has definitely struggled since its introduction into the game. Like everyone's like, oh man, Hydro Steam, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be the coolest thing, but. Like I know Sierra and I have talked about it. Like it doesn't knock out when you think it's going to knock out most of the time, right? And it doesn't live hits you think it's going to live. So the Assault Vest really helps that there. And then you're not going for one hits with Snarl and Aqua Jet. Like you're just trying to make Koraidon better. And what my conversation with James Evans, the reason Koraidon and Weezing are so good together is, I know Lunala fell off a cliff at this event, but when Lunala was at 20% of the teams, it just absolutely obliterates Lunala in the sun with no Shadow Shield intact. So, like, how credible is it as this format progresses to just have Pokemon on our team? Not that Weezing was for one Pokemon, I'm suggesting that, but very often it feels like we're starting to develop 5 Pokemon teams at least, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you guys can totally disagree. 5 Pokemon teams with a 6th Pokemon that is like absolutely for this one matchup. Is that a fair statement, or am I off base?
Dual Restricted is definitely the format where you can have the most niche Pokemon, because the 4 non-restricted Pokemon, you're only going to use them like on average half the time, but if you have 1 or 2 that you're using very frequently, that last 1 or 2 can be extremely niche. And
like Gastrodon back in the day, right? Like
Parasect, or all kinds of other like extremely niche non-restricted Pokemon that have slotted into that 6th spot. So I'm like excited to see that as we go through the summer with an AIC and Worlds. There'll be some other memorable picks in that spot, and you absolutely can like identify your restricted Pokemon or specific team composition that's a problem for your 2 restricted Pokemon, and look for the like most obscure way to just kind of take that really head on, because maybe something provides really outsized value in one particular matchup.
I love how Joe says something like relatively normal and modern, like Gastrodon, which is like probably the last restricted format that was really good in 2022. Yeah. And then Len's like, actually, I'm going to go back like 5 generations and go back to like 2010 or something.
I think Len just lives in 2010 with his Sublefty's Garchomp and his iPhone 2 or whatever phone was out in.
So bad. Sublefty's Garchomp's like a Gen 5 We're not all the way back to 2010.
I don't think it was in 2010, right? You probably...
Yeah, that's more like 2013,
Yeah. Listen, either way, 2010, that was good times, Those are good days. Len was winning regionals left and right back in the day. Okay? So that's a good era if we're gonna go back to that time. That's where we're gonna lock into. But I think honestly, like Milwaukee was fun. Portland had a great event. If there's any other like crazy this is what I want to talk about. The Ruinous Pokemon are back. Like out of nowhere. Like I feel like I'm watching a Marvel movie, and we got a post-credit scene that all these dark type legendaries have come back out of nowhere. Chien-Pao, like I would have thought without access to Focus Sash it'd be in a much worse threat, because all the Shadow Riders have Focus Sash, but it's thriving with Life Orb. It's doing just fine. We saw Ting Lu and Chi-Yu on the same team or whatever, right? Obviously there's the silly Kyogre and Wo-Chien team that Chi Liang got top 8 at NASC with last year that people try to make Wo-Chien work. Like, why did these Ruinous vote? Is it just because Shadow Rider's a ghost type, or is it why would you put 2 on the same team? That's crazy to me.
That's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for it. I think like dark types in general are definitely higher value than in previous formats, because there's so many ghost types that are good, like Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and Lunala. Like they're both like just so on the up and coming that just having that dark type to resist those attacks, I think, is a really, really big deal. So naturally, like the dark type goes up, and also you have Prankster and Grimmsnarl that's also going up in popularity. So I think like the dark type stocks are definitely higher. And that gives like more opportunities for Pokemon like Ting Lu, where just like in formats where it's a lot less centralized, the offense, it's harder for it to shine because it doesn't have those priority moves. Like, it's just not as good of an Assault Vest Pokemon by that nature. But now, you're able to, counter like Lunala and Calyrex Shadow, and just by running Stone Edge, you can check Ho-Oh. Again, it's like that role compression. I think that's a big deal. Like as Len said, if you can just have Ting Lu patch those kind of matchups, then you don't mind using the other 5 for like everything else.
Yeah, to me it really does tie back into that previous conversation, because it's not like these Pokemon were at high usage. Chien-Pao and Chi-Yu get reasonable usage. Otherwise, Wo-Chien and Ting Lu are very low percentage picks, but we saw them on stream because specific teams had them and were making good use of them. And I think that will be a constant story of like the Basculegion is in the same boat. It won the tournament. It may have been the only one that was in day 2. Like these are just there's a lot of room for Pokemon that have the like requisite stats and ability to be kind of objectively good to fit into the right place. And so Pokemon like Ting Lu and Wo-Chien, they have like powerful abilities, big buckets of stats. You just need them to fit onto the right team. And for in Regai, that will mean something different to a lot of people with so much room to specify in that last slot.
I think it also with like particularly on one, I think with Chien-Pao, there's not as many fighting types, and Urshifu's only, on 40% of the teams instead of 60% of the teams. So like You don't need the Focus Sash as much because you're not getting hit with as many fighting moves outside of Iron Hands or Sheep or whatever. Like, it's not as common of a typing as it has been in the past because there's great fairy types and whatever, so many ghost types to stop it. But, so, Chien-Pao's fine. But, like, with Ting Lu, that Sand Tomb can be such a game changer by not allowing your opponent to have those switches to, like, just, like, keep a bad Pokemon on the field in a bad position, and there's nothing they can do about it. It's like an Encore, like a disable Encore that does damage, or you know what I mean? Like, I think that I would really be excited to see how Ting Lu develops, especially on a team full of a lot of physical attackers, like a Koraidon core going into NAIC, because I think there is potential there.
Yeah, I think the popularity of Sand Tomb makes a lot of sense to me. It's also why like Encore feels even stronger than previous formats, because like immobile, like restricting your opponent's options for what they can do per turn is just so much more impactful when there's two restricted Pokemon. Like Encoring restricted Pokemon into Protect is like so much worse in Reg I than in Reg G, like in my opinion. And it's probably the same with Sand Tomb as well. Is like if you like, you know, stick a Calyrex Ice Rider on the field against, you know, maybe a Ting Lu that's Terra'd and then some other Pokemon that doesn't care about like Glacial Lances, then like you just put your opponent in such a bad position. So disable Encore, Sand Tomb, like I think those are a lot of moves that make sense to like shine even more in the Reg I.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stats here from our research now. You definitely want to get your guys' thoughts here, because like you're in the back, right? You're seeing the stats, you're pulling matches, and you're trying to. A lot of times we don't always make the right choice, but we're trying to tell the story of the region, right? The big Pokemon like we did in Milwaukee. We got a lot of those Ursaluna, Lunala teams on there because like that was the big deal. That was what was really doing it in Milwaukee. In Portland, we had a lot of Kyogres, and we look at, I think, the resurgence of CSR Zamazenta also, like maybe Europe helped remind Americans to play this really good duo together. But, you know, when we see these you see day one, 8.6%, the second most common pair for CSR Zamazenta. And then it goes up to tied for first, 18%, technically tied for the most common pairing in day two, like the players that qualified for the second day of the tournament. Like, what is it about Shadow Rider and Zamazenta that would have such a stark, like, general field? People don't want to touch it because maybe everyone's prepared for it. But then when the good players remain, they're the number one duo.
I think you probably hit one important point, which is that people are prepared for it. And I think there's some perception that if you play it, you're playing what people are prepared for. I think on stream showed one reason I'd probably never want to play it, which is that mirror match just looks miserable. Like having team ties and the wide guard shenanigans, both of your restricted Pokemon being weak to the other one. I can't imagine being in that position in a top 16 match like Emilio and Montana, where I'll stick to something else.
I think it's also like the skill ceiling is probably really high because it's the composition that everyone was worried about when Reg I first came out, but it's also the composition where you just don't have a lot of how do I say this? Like they're very independent Pokemon. Like you don't really inherently support other Pokemon. Like Koraidon gives you Photosynthesis boost. Kyogre, like, you know, I guess Basculegion is kind of an exception, but you know, instead of powering up Pokemon, maybe it gives more leverage to like lowering the fire type attacks or giving your Urshifu even stronger. Like there's a lot of support that goes on and synergies between Pokemon that your legendary Pokemon enable. But Zamazenta and Calyrex Shadow Rider are like the two Pokemon where that's just not the case. Like Calyrex Shadow Rider is very, very independent. Zamazenta can do some support, but you know, it doesn't give you weather, it doesn't give you terrain. So I think you have to be like super disciplined with your preparation and just like know like your lines incredibly well. Like there's just a lot less wiggle room. So I think it makes sense to me, like why that makes it an unpopular pick. It's probably just like maybe not as fun to use depending on the player, right? But I think maybe for the general appeal, it's probably maybe not as fun to use. And also, yeah, like the skill ceiling is much higher. So I think for both of those reasons, I can see why it's unpopular day one, incredibly popular day two.
I think it's a composition that, like you touch on, rewards a lot of very detailed micro play of like you don't have a lot of flexibility to like make broad repositions throughout the game because you don't have much bulk on colors. You may be trying to preserve the focus sash. Zamazenta, you're giving up the defense boost. You often have frail Pokemon along with them, like Chien-Pao, and so you also have very like swinging moves on both of them, whether you're actually going to encore or attack, or am I going to wide guard, or am I going to attack? And so getting each of those very delicate turns right is key to it. I mentioned how like miserable it sounds in the mirror, but it's not only the mirror. It's like every matchup you play, you're going to be making.
Every match is miserable.
You got to sweat. Yeah, you got to sweat the whole time.
You like one mistake can, and you lose too much health in Zamazenta, or you give up Calyrex and now it's down to Focus Sash and they have a priority move on the other side, and there's like no way out of this situation. And so it definitely a team that you have to have full focus at all times to have success with.
And speaking of the mirror, like I think the Calyrex mirrors always felt bad because you had the Astral Barrage, doing quadruple damage, and I think it was maybe not as bad before because you could tear out of it potentially. And as the format developed, it was less about max speed, etc. So I think that's why it was not as bad in Regulation G. Like people only complain about it at first. In Reg I, like it just feels inevitable, not only because everyone's using Focus Sash, everyone's using max speed, but also because Encore is so popular now. Like we saw some teams, for example, that use Focus Sash Terra Normal so that they don't have to deal with like that Astral Barrage speed tie, but then you still have to worry about the Encore speed tie. Like if you Encore your opponent into Astral Barrage when you're Terra Normal or into Protect or whatever, like being able to do that Encore first is a big deal. So now you have Encore and Astral Barrage, which are both game swinging moves that are dependent on a 50-50. And we actually saw that like in top 4, right? Like Aaron could have easily been in finals if the coin had flipped his way. So it's just crazy to me how volatile it is.
And you're now weak to body press, right? In the mirror. So you're getting out of the CSR weakness to become immune, and then you go right into body press. So it's like, is he going to wide guard? Is he going to body press? Is he going to terror? Is he not going to terror? Like, you see, it almost reminds me of like a TCG deck, right? Where there's like a high skill ceiling, Pokemon deck that's only 5% of the field because it's only the good players are willing to sit down for those mirrors and willing to have the precise 60 cards they need to exactly, where I know we don't have a lot of TCG fans, watching this, but like they can understand the reference that it might not be dominating the general usage pool, but of the honed crafts, like high skill players, it's more easy for them to pick up that team and perform well with it.
And just like TCG, we can flip coins too.
Yes, exactly. Oh, jeez. Sometimes it happens. Another Pokemon. I mean, my buddy Lunala. We gotta put Lunala on a milk carton and start searching because it was just non-existent. Man, Nebby was out of the bag. Was not even in Portland. Goes from 21% of teams on the restricted Pokemon on day 1 to. It's not even on the graphic. I was looking. Oh my god! I was looking on day 2. I was like, "Where's my guy Lunala?" It's not even one of the 8 most common restricted Pokemon in the field in day 2 of Portland. And like, what happened? It just had a huge performance in Milwaukee, and then it's not even a top 8 restricted.
Format slowing down is not good for it. Right? Shadow Shield's a lot less impactful if the games are going to last a lot of turns anyway. If you're not trying to break up. Single large attacks. I think some of it's probably just down to player choice as well. Like there's, you could still see Lunala having a very valuable impact against a lot of those teams that were in top cut. It's not like it was like matched up out of it, at least in my perspective.
Yeah, I honestly don't have a great answer for it. I think maybe a lot of the popular teams, at least at Milwaukee, was Miraidon paired with Lunala or Calyrex Ice Rider, both of them giving you like that slow option to go for Trick Room. And I think just from an offensive standpoint, like, electric attacks, they don't do well into ground type attacks. They don't do well into grass type attacks. And what does well into that? Well, it's ice type. So I think the type synergy perspective, like you can exploit it much better with Calyrex. So it makes sense to me why it's a better partner for Miraidon specifically. So if you're going to use Miraidon, you're probably use Calyrex, not Lunala. But other than that, like I just don't have a great grasp of why it underperforms so much. Like it should theoretically, like in a vacuum, be a very consistent Pokemon, right? Because it like should almost never be one-hit knockout. I think you can train it to not be knocked out by opposing Moongeist Beam without Terra as well. So it feels like a really consistent Pokemon. So this might be the opportunity for it to be disrespected a little bit and then have a resurgence at NASA. So I'm definitely not counting it out. But Ho-Oh is the Pokemon I want to talk about because
Let's do it. I need your Ho-Oh insight because I said we're trying to build our Ho-Oh team, and Joey had so much fun with it. We were fun. Ha ha ha! What a fun time! Look at Ho-Oh being a viable Pokemon in Milwaukee. What's going on, Yuki?
I think like Ho, like on paper, just matched up so well into the meta at first because it has such a high special defense stat. It's good into Calyrex, like Shadow Rider. It's so good into like Koraidon for obvious reasons as well. And there's one other, and Zamazenta. Yeah. So it does really well into like those top 3 restricted Pokemon. So it feels like the really good like anti-meta pick. The problem is that we're not playing singles where like you are able to play like bulky Pokemon that might not provide like immediate value. Like you can stall and like have it be like pretty viable. This is doubles where you can just double the partner and just like do a ton of damage. And like Len already talked about like how like the value of Tailwind is just not as high as previous formats because like those 3 turns just might not be enough to win because all these Pokemon are so bulky. So it makes sense to me that like the really one support role that Ho can do like reliably is Tailwind, and that just not being as high value as previous formats. So not only are you not exerting like enough offensive pressure, you're also just not providing the best support. So I think those would be the 2 most common reasons. And then the fact that you're just forced to tear in from Miraidon just doesn't feel very good.
Yeah, there's 2 common restrictions between Miraidon and Kyogre that can instantly put a Pokemon that should be kind of this bulky backbone can just stay on the field and trade. And immediately such a bad position is bad for it. I think also if it could hold 3 items, it would be one of the best Pokemon.
It'd be pretty good at that.
Not have covert, and so be just kind of vulnerable to fake out and just repositioning and not like do much while sitting on the field. Not have clear amulet, so you can just get intimidated away and really be no damage threat anymore. So it's safe to ignore, and not have leftovers, so that it's easier to bully it down than you'd think. Despite Regenerator, you're gonna have to skip 2 of those, and I think a lot of the Ho that I've played against, you can really exploit whatever it doesn't have.
Hey, if Calyrex can have two abilities, right? Ho-Oh should be allowed to have 2 held items. I'm just throwing it out. He deserves it there.
Calyrex Chicken Rider.
Well, that's our duo is called Rainbow Rider, like with CSR and Ho-Oh.
Oh.
So like I need help because I'm struggling, boys. I'm struggling. I'm in the ringer in the 1200s on Showdown trying to make my climb up, bro. And I need help.
The Michael Zhang version, the Rhydon and the Toxapex?
Okay, let's talk. Okay, thank you, Len. Thank you. Please, I hope you remember our conversation in Louisville about Rhydon and Rhyperior being the perfect Miraidon counter. Let's have it out here, brother. What were your thoughts when you saw Michael Zhang with that Rhydon?
I mean, it makes sense for Rhydon. It's in that category of extremely niche, but we can get away with it in Reg I, like non-restricted Pokemon. I think the problem is that Rhydon will always have a friend with it, or maybe a couple of friends, and those friends might be pretty good into Rhydon. I think it's hard to have a Pokemon that so passively counters something on the other side because you're not actively making progress. So you can diffuse my Miraidon pressure for a turn. I'll just take it off the field, I'll get something else on. I don't care what you're going to do to me in the meantime with Miraidon. And so then we're just going to get back into a position somewhere else. So I'm not sold. I'm not convinced. It's not like it had a runaway performance, but
because Yuki, this was like we were out. I think we were like out to dinner or something in Louisville. We were working together, and I had brought up I was building teams, and I'm like Terra Fairy, Assault Vest, Rhyperior, just walls Miraidon. You take nothing from Draco Meteor, you take nothing from the electric attacks, and I'm like, it's just something. It's like Seijune's Terra Fairy Patchia Worlds, right? Like it's just there for Miraidon. And Len is like, okay, but you still get destroyed by Choice Specs Dazzling Gleam. I was like. And then he goes, but Rhydon could work. I'm saying this shit. And Michael's like proved it right.
Yeah, and I don't think he brought it to Portland, but Audie brought it and then made day 2.
Yes, that's right.
Which is exciting. I want to give a shout out to his older brother, Rhyperior, who actually got 2 people in Japan to World Championships. Like they were able to make it through the Japan Nationals qualifier in the final 64. One of them is actually Yuta Ishigaki, who already had their invite technically, but they made it through to Japan Nationals using Assault Vest Rhyperior. They just mentioned how it really makes their opponent like just squirm if they're having Miraidon, and it's a good trick room attacker. And they also used it with counter so that if the opponent Glacial Lances, then you could take it with Solid Rock and then OHKo them back. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
That's the close team sheets.
Yeah, that's the same. Yeah, that's what they do. But I'll be honest with you, Len. When I was in Milwaukee, when I saw Michael saying with the Rhydon, you were the first person I thought of. I don't know if it crossed your mind or not.
I've probably mentioned too many bad Pokemon at some point or another. I can't think of a bad idea.
That's fair. That's fair. Listen, we cook. All that matters is we cooked. We just cooked too early. We were in Louisville while we were cooking. We had to wait for Milwaukee for the time.
I asked somebody what they thought about Tentacruel over the weekend, so they'll probably.
Okay, we're cooking. I just saw a tweet of a Gen Z person explaining to their manager what cooking versus getting cooked means, and it says you're either in the pot or holding the handle, and it's like that's a good, like, you're either cooking or you're in the pot, like you're getting cooked. That's a good way to explain it there. And unfortunately, I got cooked on.
Resist Leech Seed turns into a damage to the other side. Like,
well, not the only Leech Seed. What is this Leech Seed thing real? There was like 42 Leech Seed Calyrex Ice Riders in Portland or something. Is this a real thing? No, that's what it was 42. At least from what I saw in the Discord with my friend.
Yeah, it's something that, picking up a lot of momentum after Michael's success with it in Europe. I think it makes a lot of sense. You no longer need Calyrex to carry the entire load of the team the way you might have in Regulation G. And Leech Seed gives you a lot of win conditions. There are a lot of Pokemon that just cannot break Calyrex with Protect and Leech Seed, and so you can angle to different positions, and you don't have to rely on I've got to keep my attack stat up, I've got to get a Chilling Nate boost and go out on the offensive. I had expected this to be a consistent part of how Calyrex plays in Regai.
I would love to know the conversion rate on it, because 42 sounds really low, and I could have sworn I saw at least 10 of them in day 2.
Maybe it was all the good players, or
yeah, it's possible.
That's how it works sometimes. But let's look to the future. We're focused on Portland. Let's look to New Orleans. And Len can spoil everything because he doesn't have to hold his teams back, because Len is casting NAIC. Let's go, buddy. Very excited for you. One, how excited are you to cast at NAIC? And how much of a load off your shoulders was that top 8 in Portland, knowing that now you still seem very solid for that Worlds invite? Because imagine if you casted NAIC finals and it was the guy that comes into 75th and now you're 76th. Did that cross your mind, Len? Be honest.
I was dreading the situation where I end up at. All the predictions I'm seeing are between 940, 970. I was very high chance that I ended up in that window, and was looking forward to the round to round. Am I getting past? Am I out of the tournament yet? Might have been at least kind of fun. But no, now seems to be safe. I've not seen anyone put an estimate over 1150 or wherever I'm.
Oh my god!
So should be fine. So just get to focus on the tournament. Very excited to cast an NAIC. In its various incarnations, the U.S. National Championship, North American National Championship has always been a tournament that's meant a lot to me. I'm super excited to be behind the desk for it for the first time.
I kept the seat nice and warm for you.
Listen, Yuki. I scream from the mountaintops. I love casting with Len. Len is just the most fun. He's always got my back if I have a point. Even if he disagrees with it, he's never that's a stupid idea, Joe. He'll be like, okay, or we could do this way,
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm very, very happy for Len getting this shot at NAIC, and I was going to be saying I'll be there on the floor. I'll be rooting you on from the floor seats there as the floor host. But our meta expectations going into NAIC. We have the big events with the Miraidon Lunala, and then hearing some of the big Koraidon developments in Portland, and then obviously the CSR and Zamazenta and everything from Europe, right? Do we think there's going to be a clash? Do we think there's a secret sleeper restricted that we're not giving Groudon the respect he deserves, as Rosemary would say? What do we think is going to happen to NAIC?
I love how you brought up Groudon, because I think Groudon's it always feels like it's really well positioned in this format. There's just not that many Pokemon that can resist ground type attacks, and if you can do spread damage, if you can basically do Super Earthquake when you're not attacking your own Pokemon, it seems pretty good. So I'm pretty bullish on Groudon. I'm also optimistic about Miraidon making the resurgence. It really underperformed this weekend, which was surprising to me. But I think, we'll have like really strong players coming in, like bringing their Miraidon expertise from past formats. Like I think, those would be the Pokemon I would be interested in.
Yeah, I think there'll be a target on Kyogre after this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised to not see quite as much success from it. It just seems to be how things go in these restricted formats. I think it's hard to predict, though. We have like the 3-week gap between Portland and New Orleans gives a lot of time for players to kind of shift what they're doing. And I don't think we saw any like so clear narratives out of this like month of regulation that means either the format is solved and this is what we're going to start seeing at every tournament, or this is the thing to answer. And so, whatever we can think of that best beats that is what we'll see a ton of in New Orleans. It seems very open. I wouldn't be surprised if kind of any trend right at the last minute going into New Orleans.
I guess the one thing I want to follow up on with Kyogre is like, will it have like the Arbega Miraidon effect where it's like so strong that even if everybody knows about it, like you're still going to win? Like, Miraidon won Worlds, and then the first regional after Worlds, like it won again. So like, clearly it was so strong that even if everybody knew about it, everybody had prepared for it, it was just like not enough. Like, will Kyogre be like that? Like, I think that's the big question for me.
I think to me, it's not like Kyogre is at this point, at this many generations past its heyday, is too much of a flawed Pokemon with the speed it has and how easily like weather can be used against it, that it is, and wide guard can be used against it, that it is a hard Pokemon to have that kind of supremacy. I think it works when its answers are not as predominant, and when its answers are a little bit more predominant, it's going to struggle a lot more.
Listen, all we have to do is wait until Generation 10, because, Groudon used to be big man on campus, and then they just made a better Dragon Groudon in Koraidon. So Gen 10 will get a Dragon Kyogre, essentially, to then power creep Kyogre down. They're both on the bench, like, just looking at each other. But Groudon, I think, could work. Like, as we know, Ursaluna dominating the tournament in Milwaukee, like you mentioned. There's not a lot of ground resists at the point. I think also with Grimmsnarl's presence, like, if you get one of the reasons Groudon was so good in Sword and Shield in Series 12, right, was like it was okay to miss Precipice Blade sometimes, because with 3 max Quake boosts and an Assault Vest and Grimmsnarl screens, you had leeway to get a couple extra Precipice Blades off in a match. So I do think there might the Kyogre or the Groudon brigade might show up in NAIC to counter Kyogre, but also take advantage of this slow screens meta.
Let's talk about Precipice Blades for a second, though, because how do you think the top 75 race impacts people's willingness to go for the Precipice Blades lottery going to NAIC? Because
when I could just click Glacial Lance or Astro Barrage.
There's probably a chunk of very skilled North American players who are just thinking, I need to make sure and get top, I need to make day 2. I need to be 1 win away from day 2 to get solid points and keep a hold of my Worlds invite. And like, are you way less likely to be willing to lock in Groudon if that's the position you're in? But there's also a pool of players going, I need to really like make it all work and get to top 8 or something to make this happen at this point, who are maybe more likely. I think the psychology there is kind of interesting, because Groudon is Pokemon so connected to that accuracy role. Like, unlike Kyogre, which you can just convince yourself you're going to click Water Spout all day and not have to click the other move. There's really no other option. You're definitely clicking Precipice Blades all the time.
That's a great point.
I never thought of it that way.
What would you do, Yuki, if you needed top 128 at NAIC to get your World's invite, and you feel like you have a cracked Groudon team? Would you use it, or would you go with something more consistent because you don't want to risk missing?
And it still depends on like what the team is about, because if it's cracked where it's like, oh, if this is a 100% accurate move, then like I'm gonna go undefeated, or is it like, oh, this is a cracked team where I'm able to afford to miss Precipice Blades multiple times and still win? Like, those are like 2 different kinds of cracked. And if it's like the latter, then I think I would feel okay playing it, because I think a good example is like Sling Clefairy. It's like, oh, if I can hit it 1 every 3 times and like win, then like it's a good Pokemon. Like, those are the kind of teams I would be okay with using inaccurate moves. So I think it depends on the nature of the team.
All I'm gonna say, boys, New Orleans has a casino. And as I like to say, scared money don't make money, baby. All right. So all the Groudon players watching this pod, definitely lock in our boy. All right. So we're going to move on to just start closing out the show. We're not at the question of the week yet. That's always the last one. But this is the pre-question of the week because we had to specifically give this member of our community a shout out. Our friend Queenie, massive Yuki Zaninovich fan. Massive Yuki fan. She was the first one that was like, we gotta have him on. Well, his commentary was great. Have to know his thoughts from Portland. So Queenie has a question for both of you. You can both answer. We'll start with Yuki. How did preparing for casting differ from preparing for a tournament playing mentally? Did anything feel the same, different? So basically just kind of a general, what's the difference in preparation and feel for casting a tournament compared to playing in one?
Yeah, that's a really good question that I actually have a pretty, I'm excited to answer. So yeah, thank you for that question. Queen, is that their name?
Queenie.
Yep. Okay, yeah, thank you for the question, Queenie. So it felt really like disorienting because I felt like I had to do something like completely different from normal. So like the example I have was like when I was on the plane to like get to Portland, like I was like continuing like reading, like watching the videos, and I was like, you know what I should do? I should pause every time they're about to go for like a move and just think like, okay, what is the board state that I want to highlight? Like, what are the pressure relationships? Like, what are the players thinking that I want to highlight? And I would prepare an answer in my head, and then I would press play to see like what the caster actually said, and then be like, oh, like that's a good call out. Like, you know, like I mentioned this one, but like, you know, this is something I missed. So okay, maybe I'll keep this in mind next time. So like, I guess it's not. I guess you can do that as well for like preparing as a player, like saying like in this board state, like what would I go for? But I think you get like a lot more ideas like doing this like for casting as well. So I thought that was like a really, really cool exercise. And yeah, I kind of alluded to this earlier too, but like watching like Evan cast, watching Aaron cast, like watching Wolfe cast, like just seeing the different personalities and seeing how you mesh with them is like super important because like Pokemon is like an individual game, right? Like you might be having your own Discord service to prepare with people, but at the end of the day, it's a 1v1 sport. Like you're playing against only one other person. Whereas with casting, you have a partner. Like you cannot take up all of the verbal real estate. Like it's just not possible. It'll look terrible. Like you have to work as a team. So I think understanding like your synergies and like your tendencies and how you can be complementary to each other is super important. So like studying like the habits of the person you'd be working with, I think was super important. And I think that's what made it really fun is because it's a really human thing to do. Like Pokemon is also very human, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going to go for reads sometimes, and you just want to really understand, like, you know, get into their head. Like, you know, what are they going to? Are they going to click Sucker Punch, or are they not going to, you know, click Moongeist Beam or White Guard? But in this case, like it's like every single turn you're working with this person. So the human element was like really exciting to me. So a little bit prolonged answer, but I'm also curious to hear what Len says.
Listen, Len has to deal with this, you know, all the time, switching the two brain modes from casting to playing.
Yeah, I'll be immediately a little bit less human and just talk about the Pokemon aspect of it, which is that I often play a lot of games to prepare for either thing, and those games feel very different because preparing to play, I'm often not playing something very standard, and so I'm playing my own team and playing just like lots and lots of games with the same team and trying to really build matchup familiarity there. But when I'm prepping to cast, I'll intentionally go and try out a bunch of different very common teams so that I understand the dynamics of that team against this other one, because I've seen my own team against it, but I haven't seen, you know, these two common teams against each other that often, and I want to make sure and be prepared for that. I think ironically, preparing for this tournament ended up feeling more like, because I was not playing my own team, playing something I was given like a week ahead of time, and I think all of the like prep to cast in the past that made me better at like flexing to use different teams and to build familiarity with them on like short notice helped like make this workable despite only having like a week to prep with it.
Well, I think that's a great answer. Obviously, you guys have to go back and forth, and you know, it's like, because it's not on commentary, it's not just like what I would click, right? It's not just what I would click. It's what do I think is the best thing for them to do, and how do I communicate this to the audience? Like, there's just so much going on in the moment that I always find commentary discussions, you know, fascinating. It's always the best thing, and you know, part of the fun that we have as casters here. So now it's time. Finally, we're gonna go with our question of the week. This is our final
Wait, sorry,
question.
can I do my shout outs before that?
No, you're after. You're good. You're after.
I'm after.
It's
Okay.
after. That's at the end. You're good, buddy. I got you.
That's the very end. Okay.
Yes. So when you give your Instagram or your Twitter account, then we'll also do shout outs for everybody else.
Okay.
So, question of the week for anybody who is your first time watching the podcast for the Yuki hype, the first time you see OHKo. Welcome to our podcast here. Link down below in the description is our Discord server. We have a channel for a question of the week. We answer one question at the end of every week from one of our members, and this week is from Lebanon Don. He says, it's not just Yuki specific, but for everybody. Would you rather cast a regional at the beginning, middle, or end of a format?
For me, the answer is
I
want to be at the beginning of the format. I want to see that new tech. People are always like cooking a little bit more at the beginning. I love to see it. I love to see how people come out swinging in the first tournament of a format.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. Like, I mean, I guess I'm biased because my first casting experience ever was like pretty early on in the format. But yeah, like that Solgaleo weakness policy will live rent free in my brain for a really long time, and definitely like a big memory I'll keep forever being able to cast that. So I think early on in the format is when, yeah, as Len mentioned, or when people are cooking and you see a lot more volatility. And yeah, like it just like it's so much more fun as like a caster and as an audience, right? To just see all these like whack things that work really early on that just might not work as much in the end when things are more centralized and people figure things out more.
I think it's a tough question too, because there are pros and cons to everything, because like the skill level or like the precision of teams might not be as high at the beginning of an event, but the excitement is always high because we don't know what is going to perform. Like I think of Rajan with the win last year, right? With Miraidon, right? So like it was like that. Oh my gosh, that was so crazy. That only happened because we didn't know Miraidon was actually busted this whole time, like, because it was a new format. But I do think there's something about the end of a format, say like a capstone region or a capstone worlds, like we're sending a format off, and when something crazy happens there, like Pachirisu related or whatever crazy tech, was a Glycopod, right, in 2022, right, when there is a big tech or a big reveal at the end of a format, like that hype can exceed the hype of the beginning format regional. However, this does not happen as often as how exciting the beginning of a regional is. So, our beginning of a format. So I would definitely agree with you guys that casting like it's just the new car smell, right? Every regulation is just the new fun time to get excited for. So, all right, now it's time to lock in and say our shout outs everybody, because honestly, Yuki, we were all so happy. You crushed it in Portland. Happy to have you on the team. It's exciting times here. You're adding another member to the crew. So happy you came on the pod with us. So any shout outs, and where can people find you on social media? The whole floor is yours, my friend.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, first I want to shout out the OHKo podcast, Sierra, Joe, and yeah, Len for being on here with me. I guess, yeah, all three of you are casters too. So it'd be really exciting to work together with you. And I guess I just didn't really have the time to like fully think about Portland holistically. So I think this was like good experience, even just for me to like think through like what the event was like and help me prepare for NISC myself as well. And it was just a fun time chatting. So I really appreciate being on here. I also want to, shout out the Pokemon Company and specifically Katie, who took a chance on me. Like, I didn't have that real like official casting experience yet. And she said, we liked how you sounded in Yokohama and how you were working on the more grassroots tournaments. And yeah, you always take a chance on someone who doesn't have that full experience. And I'm really grateful for that. So thank you so much to them and their team. And also to the folks at Victory Road, because that's really the first time that I really got to have the chance to cast. And that I can't take for granted either. Like they have a lot of people who have a lot of interest, and they took a chance on me who literally had no experience casting like at all at that point. So like the fact that I got the casting experience through that was really like instrumental to me. So like Axe, Yanguas, Sufi, I think those are who I mostly work with, but everyone on the team probably had a say in that. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, like my really close friends like Marcus and Aaron, Zhang specifically, like both of them have coached me a lot throughout the days. Gabby as well. Like I just have a lot of people who are supporting me, not like in general as well, but specifically in casting, giving me like really good advice. And you just never know what's going to happen on game day, but I felt like I was really well prepared because of the friends who were supporting me, like, both with like actual technical advice, but also like emotionally. So I guess my final shout out is all my friends and family who have been supporting me both as a player and as a caster. They definitely know who they are.
Len, where can we find you, even on social media? Because you make like a tweet once every 5 months, so maybe just like, you know, he's all over the place at this point. Where can we find you?
Yeah, if you want to find my biannual tweets, it's at PKMN. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Joe. It was like super fun to be back and be on the cast. And for shout outs, thanks to Aaron and Brendan, of course. I mentioned that they like hooked me up with a week to go for the tournament. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. I'd have been on here sad about how I had only not enough points to make Worlds, and it was over. So I'm glad that they bailed me out.
Yeah, and shout out to Anthony for being my hero, absolute hero. We needed Len on the pod today, and Anthony took over the team to make that happen. So thank you all very much. We also just crossed, precisely as we started recording, 3,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Congratulations!
We literally got there, so that's like the Wolfe effect was real, because we were at like 1,700 for a while, and then we had Wolfe on after Toronto, and getting from 2 to 3 was way quicker than getting from 1 to 2, honestly. But thank you all so much for the support on YouTube and Spotify. The community is growing every single day. Exactly. For Yuki, for Len, for Sierra, who'll be back next week as we do our NAIC preparations and discussions. I'm Joe Brown. Thank you all for watching the OHKo podcast. We'll see you next time.